This is a quick introduction to the project that we'll be doing. I want to give you a quick overview so that when you fill out your information for the teams and as we go along, you can remember some things that are kind of important. First, the project. What we're doing is creating a business plan for a live client. Okay. It's created over approximately 13 weeks and it's done in stages that you'll submit to me along the way. At the end, there will be a formal presentation and a written report. So let's start with the teams. I've asked you to fill out a student profile so that I can assign teams. What I do is I try to bring in members for each team that will complement each other. In other words, you have to fill out how you feel about your skills in accounting and finance and management and marketing, blah, blah, blah. And so what I try to do is I try to get an accounting person, a marketing person, a management person, a finance or econ person on each of the teams so that you complement each other. You will have a chance to put on your team if there's somebody you do want to work with or somebody you don't want to work with, and to discuss your scheduling issues. So I take all those things into account. Okay, work with your team. You need to be able to work with your team as closely as possible. It's good to share ideas, and it's good to put in your 2 cents worth. Don't try to take over, but on the other hand, you need to participate. Read the guidelines. It talks about working with teams. I would recommend that you set up at least 3 positions within your team. The first is your CEO, who's your team leader. Just kind of keeps people in line. The second is the devil's advocate, so that when recommendations are made or weird things come up, the devil's advocate can argue for or against, depending on whatever, to make people think. For example, if we were to say, increase spending on advertising, the devil's advocate might say, well, how are we going to do that? We can't afford it. Where are we going to advertise? How are we going to get the most bang for our buck? That's what the devil's advocate should do. And finally, a writer. If you have a designated writer, what happens is when you put your paper together, instead of sounding like 5 or 6 people wrote it, it will all come out so that it sounds like one person wrote it. We call that one voice. That also allows one person to make changes, keep track of all of the documentation, and so on. Choosing a client. How we get clients. We advertise in the paper. We have former students, and we have people out there that know what we do. And so what happens is these clients apply to us and contact us about having a business plan done. And we look them over, and those that are the best, we put on a list for you guys. So how do you get a client? Well, basically what's going to happen is I'll send you a list probably the morning of the mandatory meeting and say, okay, these are the clients that are available. And that'll give you a little bit of time to talk with your teammates about who you might be interested in as having a client. If we're lucky, we'll have more clients than we have teams. There's going to be a mandatory chat next week. And what will happen is your team will choose a client. And we do it through some big random number generation and stuff so that there's not, team one isn't just automatically most likely to get the person that they want. If you are not able to attend that chat, I will have already assigned you to your teams. So make sure that if you can't attend that chat, that you tell your teammates kind of what it is you're interested in doing, or if there's a particular client that you're interested in. Okay, working with the client. There's some paperwork that has to be filled out by you and the client. The first of these is called the client commitment. It's part of the stages of what we have to do. The other thing is to understand that there's a fee for the work that we do. Nonprofits and startup businesses, in other words, those that are anywhere in the idea stage clear through to 6 months old, pay us $250. That's basically for administration of the program. And for-profit clients that are older than 6 months old pay us $500. When you contact your client, because you're distance, you can use the phone, you can use Skype, you can email, whatever you want to do. However, I would kind of recommend that you either set up a point of contact so that the poor client isn't overwhelmed with 10,000 of the same questions. Or that you set a point of contact up for each of the general areas, like a management point of contact, a marketing point of contact. Whichever way works best for you. Okay, getting information from your client. If your client's in town and you have a billings member, you can go visit the client, meet face to face. You can, as I said, uh, email or so on. Now, the one thing that clients are supposed to understand is that they have to release their financial information. Okay, and sometimes this causes them a little bit of problem. So you might have to wheedle your way through, and it may be later in the semester when you actually get that information from the client. Okay. The one thing you have to be kind of careful about is giving your client too much information. Your client gets all excited and wants to start implementing everything that you've done. So, for the most part, you don't need to really keep your client up to date on what you're recommending and so on, although you can kind of keep them up to date as to where you are in the project. Okay. The plan itself comes in stages. The first thing is the client commitment. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to write a client commitment based on a very relatively strict format that includes the legalese that the university's lawyers require. You'll submit that to me in a draft. I'll go through and make any corrections that I want on it, and I'll send it back to you. And then you will sign it, and you will send it to your client. The next is the environmental analysis. Now, all this stuff is in the assignments folder, but just as a quick overview. The environmental analysis is the analysis that will lead up to the SWOT. Okay, you'll turn that in as a separate document. Part of it you will use in the body of the text, part of it will be in your marketing section, part of it will be in your operations section, and the rest of it will go into an appendix. Then you'll generate a business model for your client. Now, we'll be going through how you do all this stuff as the class goes along. You'll generate a business model using the business canvas, and you'll turn that in, and I'll make any comments on that. Then you'll get submission one. Submission one is the entire plan for the first time. It will include the environmental analysis, the business model, and whatever other additional parts of the actual written report you have turned in. This is basically an ACF. In other words, if you've done it and you're where you should be and everything's cool, then you'll get an A. If you're behind or you have some problems or you haven't made the corrections I've asked for on the environmental analysis or the business model, then you'll get a C. If you are looking at me going, what the heck is submission one, then you'll get an F. Okay, submission two is basically the same, except it's further along. At this point, you should have enough information that I can make corrections, I can make comments, I can say, have you thought of this or have you thought of that? Finally, you'll do a final submission to me. It's due at least 1 week before the presentation. It will be in the format as if you were sending it to your client, except that it's not bound. I will go through, do a final proofread, read on it, and I will grade this submission. This final submission must be proofread. I will not grade your grammar, check your grammar and stuff like that for corrections. If I get to a certain number of mistakes, I will just simply send it back to you and you'll have to try again. And I've had that happen. So get it proofread by somebody who knows how to proofread. And then the day of this presentation, you'll bring a copy of the corrected final submission, bound and really looking sharp, and a copy for me as well of the final paper. Okay, last is the presentation. You will have a billings member on your team or somebody from the surrounding area, which we consider to be, Lockwood or Laurel, okay, who will be expected to be present at the college for the presentation. The other members of your team may elect to come if you're not too far away. You don't have to. We'll do the rest of you on a Skype. Okay, this is a formal presentation. It will require that you dress appropriately, and in the business guidelines, everything is in there. The business plan guidelines, everything's in there about how you have to dress. It will be a PowerPoint presentation, and you will be graded both individually and as a team on your presentation. and we will be having a chat before that to talk about it. That's kind of the project overview, so you can have some idea of what's going to be happening this semester.